Welcome, welcome, welcome in, everyone. Welcome to Care Concierge with Carepatrol, where education is the heart of everything we do. It's the heart of those of our clients and friends and colleagues and partners like Holliman, who are bringing today's presentation to you. We are accredited, for those of you who may be new to Care Concierge and Carepatrol. We're accredited by the Alabama Board of Nursing, and we're also accredited by the Alabama Board of Social Work. And this hour will be one contact hour for you. We have an evaluation process, which is we have a link. So you must do an online evaluation of today's comments, or rather presentation, CEU. And once you've completed that evaluation, then you qualify for credit. Nurses, we post your hours for you on the ABN website, and we sometimes do miss one. So I appreciate those of you who've reached out to let us know, to let us repost things. And social workers, you'll receive a certificate, as will nurses, as will everyone who completes today's course, completes an evaluation, receive a certificate. And this, for you social workers, because we use a password protected system, will be considered a live hour or a classroom hour and not a recorded or video, as would be the case had this password not been put into place. The link, and I know that some of you are participating by phone or working or doing whatever, and we appreciate you taking time for us. Those of you who can't see the screen or the chat room where I've posted the evaluation link, I'll read it to you now so that you can make note of it for afterward. The password protected evaluation link for today's course, which is Medicaid and long-term care crisis planning, is https://www.surveymonkey.com/r/ all uppercase letters, S as in Sam, V as in Victory, F as in Francine, 3, 9, T as in Terry, F as in Francine. That is the evaluation link. Again, we give out the password at today's end. This is 1.0 contact hour. And I'm so happy with today's presentation. I had a chance to view it before, and it's very in-depth, and I hope you will bring your questions. You know, we believe, and I know that our host, or our guest host, believes, as I do, that we're enriched and value when you participate and ask questions, join in the discussion. Let us know your own experiences and evaluations and things that you've learned that may be of benefit, not only to us, but to those on the line with us. So thank you so much. And I'll allow now Ms. Bradford Holliman, or do you prefer Ms. Holliman now?
Holliman.
Okay, I'll step aside, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here. I know it's a holiday and there are a number of people watching, so I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you. So I wanted to first, and let me just try to make sure I can scroll through this easily. Okay. Just first, I was going to give you just a tiny bit of background for us. We have our office in Pelham, and which is, of course, Birmingham. I'm sure all of you know that. But John and I have around 51 years of legal experience together.
Wow. You want to advertise that?
I will, because it's combined. That's the only way I would say it. I have 18 years of focused, and by focused, I mean exclusively handling Medicaid pre-planning, applications, appeals, trust work involved with long-term care planning. So I've got 18 years of exclusive practice in the area. John has spent around 33 years handling real estate transactions, which is actually a huge bonus, because any of you that have dealt with Medicaid applications know that we often have real estate title problems that arise, and you don't have a lot of time to fix these. So he's got the skill set to deal with those crisis issues. And then he also focuses on the Medicaid pre-planning and especially VA service connected and pension benefits, which is really good because it helps to bring in other sources of payment, other sources of funds to pay for long-term care. So that's just a little bit about us. We handle applications, we handle situations really through Northeast Alabama, Central Alabama, and from time to time all over. So before we look at Medicaid specifically, I want to spend some time talking about other types of care, how much care costs, problems with care, and then getting into the last resort, which of course that means Medicaid. So for your long-term care methods, and I know that if you're not involved with this on a daily basis, you're involved with it to some degree, but we have in-home care, independent living, assisted living, memory care, which is also what we tend to call shorthand the nursing home, and then the VA nursing home, which is occasionally appropriate for a client. So the problems with the in-home care, this can be a great solution for a number of years. And as we go through this, I'll talk more about how you're transitioning through this. But initially, when the person is starting to age and have difficulty, staying at home with some assistance may be the very best option, and probably is what the person most desires to do. It can be expensive, however. So as the person starts to require more care, and especially if the person is a larger person, they're not mobile, and you have maybe a small sized caregiver. And I'll just give you a perfect example. You all know that this is true, but my mother several years ago had a stroke, 90 pounds, always throughout her life, but she could not assist me at all. And I found out quickly that moving her around was not easy. I couldn't really do it when she couldn't help me. Now, as she got better and she could help me, I could do it, but I couldn't do it when she was a dead weight. So this happens for most of our caregivers, and especially if you have a really tall, big guy that is, and you've got the little tiny wife, then she may not be able to handle it, or she may try and then she injures her back, or she falls and she breaks a hip, or any number of things happen. Now, the spouse will probably start to experience some burnout, some fatigue, frustration. Their emotions are going to be high. Children will do the same thing. And children are usually coming into this with children, their jobs, and trying to take care of mom and dad. So as they start to bring in private caregivers, this is usually going to cost around $18 an hour or more if it's from a service provider, which we recommend, because if you've got someone that is coming through a service, they're insured, it's bonded, you have a way to address problems. I've seen some really terrible situations over the years with caregivers. And if you've got a service, it's just much better. One example, the neighbors told the family that the caregiver was leaving in the afternoon As soon as the family was down the road and out of sight, the caregiver would literally climb out the window and be gone until about 7 o'clock the next morning, when they knew the family would be coming back at 8. So the family actually went back, stayed at the house that night, and were waiting on the caregiver when she climbed back in the window. So again, a service can be much better, and you can address problems. If you're paying someone under the table, so to speak, and a lot of people do this, they're doing it because it's cheaper. They're trying to make the money last, or they have some, a little lady down the street that wants to do it, but she wants it to be in cash. Well, that is illegal, but it is cheaper. But there are problems that can come along with this. What if she falls? She's either going to report you on some sort of workers' comp claim, or she's going to be suing, and it's going to cause problems that you did not expect. And if something like that happens, then the few dollars you saved is not really beneficial. All of that said, however, private caregiving at home, especially if you're doing this 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, you're looking at least $13,000 a month. And when you get to that point, it's just really not feasible for families. If you're at maybe 12 hours a day, okay, it may be feasible, but 24/7 care is not usually what a family is going to want to do. Now, independent living, of course, is where the person, the resident, is on campus. It's either an independent home, it may be a patio home, it may be an apartment, and the resident basically lives their life independently, but they know that they can call out and have help if needed. They may have housekeeping services or meal prep. They will have transportation to doctors and stores, social events if they want to attend those. And this is usually going to be cheaper. Now, this may be relative to the environment, the community that the resident is living in. In Birmingham, you may have something that's going to be more along the lines of, it could be 6,000 or more. It's probably going to be cheaper. It's probably going to be more around 3,500 or 4,000 a month. But you have to look at the facility, and you have to look at the services that you're asking them to provide, and of course the community. As the resident needs more care, they are going to move into assisted living. Assisted living is not going to be an individual home, but it may still be, it will be their own apartment. It may be a larger apartment or a smaller apartment, depending on the plan of care selected. But it's going to be in-house, where the staff is there and able to check on the residents and provide that extra assistance. Again, looking at the community where the resident is located, it may be $3,400, $3,500. It may be up to $4,600. That's usually the range in your more rural areas. But again, it may be between $8,000 and $10,000 if you're in Birmingham and you're picking an extremely nice facility. The cost is going to be much lower than the private care. And so it's a good option if the person needs that round-the-clock care where they can at least push a button, but you're not paying for someone to truly be watching you 24/7. Now, as far as payment, and we'll talk about this more in just a little moment, VA aid and attendance can be used to help pay for this. And that is a benefit. It can stretch the residents' funds for years. We've had clients that have been able to remain in assisted living and memory care for their life simply because of these benefits. So it's a good option to use if you can do it. And of course, memory care is going to be the same. It's just going to be for someone who is not able to recognize their medicines, needs a lot of assistance, but it's going to be the same type of thing. Medicaid's not going to pay for it. So it's all going to be coming out of the person's pocket. Now, for skilled nursing home, this is, of course, the nursing home. This is going to be where you have the 24/7 care. It's going to be a situation where you've got the nursing care available at all times and will be able to provide for the individual with whatever needs they have. It's going to be between $8,000 and $9,000 a month, basically anywhere in the state. And that is something that can be very difficult for the clients to pay. So, and that's what we're going to spend most of our time on today. So, Medicaid's what I'm calling the end of the road. When the client or the claimant, Medicaid calls them a claimant, cannot pay for this any longer, then now they find out, the family finds out that the rules change. Now, what do I mean by the rules change? Well, up until Medicaid becomes an issue, in fact, for all of us that are listening to this today, if I said something about your banking account that is in your sole individual name, you would say, that's my account. I can do whatever I want to with it. You would probably even say, it's not my spouse's account. They can't touch it. That's not true when Medicaid gets involved. And families learn very quickly that the rules that they thought they knew no longer apply. And they also find out quickly that the actions they took based on the rules that they thought they knew have gotten them into trouble. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Now, at the time that they're starting to transition, whether they're at home, whether they're in an assisted living facility, a memory care facility, what's happening is you have a loved one that has now had some sort of major event. It may be that they have declined significantly in the last few weeks or the last few months. It may be that they've had a major event like a stroke or a broken hip or pneumonia or something that has triggered them not being able to recover and really be in the environment that they were in before this happened. You've got a family that's usually emotionally distraught. Now, we all know there are cases where the families are not distraught and maybe they're greedy or something along that line. But in general, the families are truly traumatized and they do not understand what's happening. They may have a spouse that is the healthy one, but healthy is a relative term. So we may have a spouse that's going to stay at home. They're losing the spouse that they have lived with for any number of years. That person's now going to a nursing home. They don't understand the rules. They don't know how they're going to be able to live. So they don't know what they're going to be allowed to use to live on. So all of this is very traumatic for these individuals. So I wanted to just really focus on that for a moment because sometimes we get so involved because we see this every day I'm assuming you do from the standpoint of what you're seeing every day. We do because we hear these sorts of stories every day. And sometimes it's easy to forget that the individuals that are coming to you or working with you are truly not in the right frame of mind. And I don't mean that they're incompetent. I mean, they are just traumatized by the entire situation. So part of this is for you to be able to help them get through this. You're not really going to be telling them exactly what they need to do, but any assistance, any guidance, any encouragement is going to help. It's also a traumatic experience for the nursing home. Now, how many times have you ever heard someone say that? Well, probably never. But doing this for as long as I have, I know that it is traumatic for the nursing home because the nursing home has to make money. If they don't make money, they don't stay in business. But the nursing home, almost every day, I'm sure several times a day, is asked to accept residents on short notice. They don't have time to perform an in-depth audit. And if they did have time, they don't have the resources really to perform an in-depth audit of the residents' financial records. So they're accepting these people, hoping everything is going to work out. Either they're going to be able to private pay or they're immediately going to be able to get on Medicaid. But if the person has any kind of issues, now the nursing home is tasked with trying to fix those problems. And sometimes those problems require legal fixes, such as if we have a situation where real estate's involved and you've got to transfer real estate, or you've got to go to probate court and get a guardianship conservatorship. Those are situations where you've got to go through legal process to fix the problem or to even start to fix the problem. The facility doesn't have the time to do this and probably does not want to pay out of its own funds for someone to fix the situation. So now you have a situation where, do we kick the person out? Is someone in the family going to pay to fix this situation or pay a penalty, or can it be fixed? So it's traumatic, or can be traumatic, for the nursing home also. So what do you do, meaning the nursing home, meaning any of you, if you're starting to see that a situation like this is evolving? What do you do with someone that may have problems in their financial records over the past 5 years? What do you do when the person has no family that can take care of them? Or if they do, they're not physically or mentally able to take care of the resident. I mean, sometimes we have family members, they care, they're just not equipped to provide true caregiving care. So what do you do? Well, Medicaid is going to be the only alternative we've got, and that's going to be our challenge, is what do we do if we're dealing with Medicaid and now all of the rules have changed and we've got problems in this claimant's background for obtaining Medicaid. So the snapshot overview of Medicaid is the individual, they'll call it the claimant, but the person has to be a U.S. citizen or a qualified alien. The person must live in Alabama and intend to stay in Alabama. And that's an easy one. It's, someone could be in Atlanta, Georgia today and move to Alabama tomorrow and say that they're intending to stay there, and they've met that criteria. That's not a difficult one. Now, the person must also meet medical criteria, and that's more for you. That's not one that I will get into. But from my viewpoint, if we're looking at Medicaid, then we're generally not dealing with medical criteria. And by that, I mean, it's usually not an issue. It's usually easy to say that they're meeting the medical criteria. The hard ones are the person's gross income must be at or below $27.42 a month. That's gross, again, not net. And of course, all of your clients, residents, are going to tell you their net because that's what they see in their bank account. So finding out the gross can sometimes be difficult. But the really hard one is assets. They've got to be at or below $2,000. Now, when they come to you, they may be below $2,000. And that may be a very bad thing, depending on what's in their financial history. So the rules are right, are simple, right? You know that they're not simple at all. If you've dealt with any clients that are going into a nursing home, anyone going into a Medicaid situation, you know that potentially everything can go wrong with this. And that's what we're going to spend the rest of the time talking about. So some common situations that you've probably run into, or if you haven't, you will. So we have a resident's family that's instructed to spend down all of the assets until the resident is at or below $2,000, which I personally am going to pose to you is a terrible idea, because you really need to start doing an investigation before they get to the $2,000 mark. So maybe we could fix some of these problems. But perfect example, family spends down to $2,000. Now you find out that 4 years ago, the resident paid $50,000 for a grandchild to go to college. Now, 4 years ago, that was perfectly legal. There's not an illegal thing about that. A lot of grandparents want to do this. But now the rules have changed. And no one told them about this 4 years ago. So now it's a problem. Or you have a resident that's been paying the son's car payment for the last 3 years, and insurance too. And it's been probably around $27,000 that's been expended for this car. Happens all the time. Well, that's a problem now. It wasn't a problem when the person started doing it. So again, now the family is being told that things they thought were perfectly legal are not, and they're also being treated like it's almost a crime, which it is in Medicaid's eyes, but it's not in other scenarios. Other things, it doesn't happen as often, but if you've got older people and they're not married and they've got joint accounts with significant others, then that can be a real mess, because it's joint. You know the rules. The rule is that if the resident owns it jointly, the resident can go take out 100%. So Medicaid's going to consider it to be 100% of the resident's money. Girlfriend is not going to think that it's 100% of his money. Now, sometimes you can remedy this a little bit if you can prove that the girlfriend really deposited money. But normal rules, normal law, doesn't say anything about it being who deposited the money. So again, this can be a really sticky situation. And if you've got someone like a girlfriend that takes the money and runs, you may have a family that has no way to fix this situation, or a nursing home that has no way to get this person approved without a big penalty. Now, another one that comes up fairly frequently, the residents withdraw cash. And this is a thing with older people. I don't think it is so much with the younger generation. And as we all get older, this will probably go away. But the older generation likes to take cash out and they like to pay bills in cash. And I've even had clients that paid every single bill in cash. They would withdraw their entire Social Security check and then go around town paying all of their bills each month. That's a mess to prove to Medicaid. And the sooner you know that you've got that mess, the better. So you've got time to start dealing with it. Another thing is maybe the resident is paying a child's mortgage payments. Maybe the child was providing care. And the family thinks that that was perfectly appropriate. Maybe the child gave up his or her job and the parent thought that it was appropriate to pay the child's mortgage payment because this would be compensation. But if you don't have the right documentation, Medicaid doesn't usually think that's the case, and you can have penalties for that. So in all of these situations, you have potential problems. And I want you to be aware of these problems. Now, I see that I've got 2 questions. I'm going to cover these 2 little points and I'll go to the questions. So, and I touched on this a moment ago. If you have a married couple and the wife is terrified about how she's going to survive, or the husband, it's the person that's staying at home. They're used to being on a budget. They know exactly how much money they have to meet all of their bills. And now someone is telling them that some of that money has to be used for the nursing home, and they're afraid. Or you have a situation where a resident was conned out of money. Now, this could be a child, but in the scenario I'm giving you here, I hear this all the time. So this is a pretty common one. Last week it was someone from Jamaica, so that's why I said the Caribbean, but it's routine for older people to be conned out of money. And they may be conned out of a lot of money before the children realize what's happening. And of course, you may not be able to get it back. So now you've got a situation where you've got to make Medicaid believe that. Let's see the questions. Oh, okay. Not questions. All right. So
I have a question because
yes.
I have on it. I'm asking for free legal advice. So my mother and some of the folks who listened to us before know this, gave away before we could stop it about $220,000 to someone, well, people from all over, actually, the Caribbean, Nigeria, the United States.
Yes.
All under a scam from a lottery type situation. So anyway, I became conservator for her, and it's my understanding now that there is no Medicaid for her. Is that correct?
I would say no. So, and this is the kind of situation, however, where if she has no money now because she's spent it all, most likely, now there's a situation where the nursing home can't keep her, or they don't want to take her because of this situation. But you've got to take legal action, or as much as you can, to try to prove that she was truly scammed, and then make Medicaid believe it. So in some situations, what I'll do with the conservatorship, I will ask the court to recognize the fact that, and I will sometimes bring in DHR on this, because when you have a person in this situation, you can stop Medicaid from saying that they can't have benefits while you're trying to prove that there was a crime committed. And this could be a child that stole the money, or it could be someone from Kansas that stole the money. But while you're trying to prove that, they should stop the pending denial or approval, stop the application process. What you're trying to do is show that you've taken every step that you possibly could to get the money back. you can't get it back, but you tried. And you're showing by doing those things that she didn't do it willingly. I mean, she did it willingly, but you're going to have to show in your situation, she wasn't competent, so she didn't do it willingly.
Okay.
And
Does conservatorship prove that in any way itself?
well, only by getting the court to review the situation, you're going to you'll want to pull in medical records and show when did the dementia stop or start, when when did we start having problems.
Mhm.
And with testimony and records, you should be able to prove, hey, mom started having problems, a year and a half ago, and this happened 8 months ago. She didn't realize what she was doing. Sure, she knew she was giving money to people because she thought she won something, but she didn't really understand what she was doing. And the more her situation has progressed, the easier it is to prove it.
Yeah, I guess that's our difficulty, and maybe that of others, is I had no idea that my mother had dementia until I discovered this one day when the bank called me out of the blue. I mean, I was actually shocked. And it sort of educated me in a very good way for the benefit of others that sometimes the first thing that presents in dementia is judgment. And you see, when you see an elderly loved one begin to have a scam, that's the time to step in, I think.
Yes,
But
yes.
I learned that by not knowing. I learned it by not doing it properly. But hopefully others will.
Well, but the thing is, until someone tells you that something odd is happening, most children are not going to know because they're trying to respect their parents. They're staying out of their business. They want them to be able to manage their own life for as long as they can. And you don't realize people that are dealing with deficit, depending on how much you interact with them, can hide it to an extent. But, if you look back at her medical records, you might very well find out that there's something in those records that the doctors had already started to realize she had some problems. Maybe not bad enough that they did anything, but problems that the court might recognize were bad enough because you clearly were able to get conservatorship.
We hope. I think I'll have to come to you again at that time because yeah, it's very unique. My mother's case, as my mother herself is. So yeah, it's probably worth a better discussion, longer on paying you to do so.
But it's a great question because it comes back to the same situation I was just talking about, which is it can be traumatic for everyone, including the nursing home. Because let's just say you put mom in the nursing home and then you realized that the money was gone. And now you're trying to navigate a Medicaid application, Medicaid saying she gave away money. You're trying to prove she didn't. The nursing home's in a panic because they're not sure if they're going to be paid. It's a bad situation for everyone. It's a situation that can be fixed. And that's one of the big things that I want to get across in this. A lot of situations can be fixed either by finding it earlier and really getting to work on it, or by just knowing, the right thing to do, which comes back again to the sooner you start looking at their records, the sooner you start diving into that history, the sooner you know if there's a problem. I just don't like to see people spend down and then start doing the audit because too often something will come back to bite everyone.
I noticed when you said that. I'm glad you said that. Miss Cadell says, does this qualifying income level for Medicaid reflect the most recent cost of living adjustment?
I will have to check because I believe it does. I checked it this morning, and my source said that it was October of 2023, but I would want to verify again to be sure. As far as I know, yes, that is the most recent. With income, now this is a requirement to get Medicaid, and sometimes people will come to me and say, I can't get Medicaid because I have too much income, or the children will say it about the parent. They can't get it because they have too much income. Income is never a problem. Income can always be corrected by using what is called a qualifying income trust, or a QIT. And really, a QIT is, I call it a glorified checking account. And what that means is Medicaid says that if you do need a trust document, it's a very, very short trust document, but you'll open a checking account and you're going to put all of the income in that is over the excess. And when I say all of the income, you'll put the entire pension benefit or the entire Social Security benefit, whatever it is that's pushing the person over the limit, you'll put that into the QIT. And Medicaid says, okay, we'll pretend that you're not really over the income limit, and we'll proceed as if you are under the limit. And that account is, of course, going to be used for the residents' nursing home needs, and it's going to be applied toward the monthly liability amount. So it's always something that can be fixed. It's the resources. It's getting down to the $2,000, and especially when there's a spouse, that is your problem. Your problem is, what did they do over the past 5 years that is going to get them in trouble, and making sure that they tell you everything they did, either because they recognize they did something wrong, or because you want to make sure they're not hiding it from you. You know, surprisingly, I've had clients lie to me before, and it's going to be found out. You're not going to get away with hiding something if they're doing a good audit. So that never works well. If they will tell you everything that has happened, or at least you're able to do that good review, then you can find out what's happened, and then you can address it. When it comes after the Medicaid caseworker has already found it, it's you're late in the game to fix something. But so back to just
we've got a couple more questions, actually.
Sure, yes.
Amy Fuqua says, how long does the QIT account have to be in place before placement can occur?
Well, so placement, what I do with the QIT, two things. You're wanting to make sure that your resources are where they need to be before the first day of the month, your assets, and you're wanting to make sure that the QIT, the income, is where it needs to be before the first day of the month. Now, typically, we'll open a QIT account, but if the clients come to me on the 29th day of the month, then they don't have time to get Social Security to put the deposit into the actual QIT account. So it's going to go into their old checking account, and then we have to guide them in moving it over to the QIT in its totality that first month. And then your goal is, by the second month, that you've done whatever you needed to do with the Social Security Administration or any kind of pension company, and have them direct deposit into the QIT account.
Well, the other question, she said, never mind. She read it on your screen. So.
Oh, okay. Okay. So now going back to just more of the general overview of what happens with Medicaid. Medicaid is going to take a snapshot of the couple's assets, and the snapshot is on the day of institutionalization. That may be the day that the person goes into the hospital, or it may be the day that they go directly into a nursing home. It depends on where they go first. Usually they go to the hospital first, just practically speaking. So it's the first day that they went into the hospital in that situation, and you're looking at everything they have as of that date to calculate the spend down. And then, of course, this is where people start becoming very surprised when they find out their prenuptial agreement is not going to protect them unless they really want to get a divorce, and their IRAs and their life insurance and all of these things that they thought they owned separately are now on the table in a common pot for paying for this person that's just went into the nursing home. So out of all of the assets, if you have a situation, well, what they actually do is they total up all of the assets and they divide it by 2. And they say that the community spouse, which is the spouse that stays at home, is able to keep up to a maximum of $148,620. Or there's a floor of $29,724. So, for example, if the couple has $25,000 to their name, then the community spouse is going to be able to keep all of that. But if they have $500,000 together, the community spouse is not keeping half of it. So this is where you start getting into those problems, and this can have very harsh results. But going back to income for just a second, and this helps alleviate some of the fear in the community spouse. The spouse can keep some of the institutionalized spouse's income. And then this, of course, depends on how much the community spouse receives. But if you can keep enough to get the community spouse up to $2,465 a month. So in the example that I have below, we have Mr. Smith getting $3,500 total a month, and we're saying this is gross, and Mrs. Smith receives $800 total. Then she's basically going to be able to keep $1,665 a month of Mr. Smith's income in combination with hers to get her up to the minimum level. So this can be a huge relief. Some clients don't think it's as much of a relief if they're really wanting to keep it all, but it can be a huge relief. The homestead is exempt for almost up to $700,000 in value. But exempt is really, in my mind, very misleading, because the homestead, what happens is it's exempt while someone's living there. It's exempt if the person going into the nursing home says that they're going to return home. It's exempt until they die. Or if they're married, it's exempt until both of them are dead. There's a few other exceptions, but for the most part, it means they're just not taking it while someone's living. It means they're putting a lien against the house. So in my mind, it's not truly exempt. It does give you time to deal with things, and this is where I would say you do need a lawyer to be involved, because we never think you should leave the house title to both spouses. Well, why? Well, because if you handle it correctly and it's transferred to the community spouse, and of course, the community spouse could die early, but if you update the community spouse's estate plan, and you have to do it correctly because you cannot omit a spouse, that's a Medicaid no-no. But if you do everything correctly, you can actually avoid the lien and save the house, and it's perfectly fine for the nursing home purposes. The nursing home's going to be paid. There's no problems there. It's not a penalty. But you've preserved something that they really wanted to pass on and could be a huge asset to the family. And there's other exceptions. I'm not going to get into all of the exceptions, but because I don't have time, but there are other exceptions. The biggest thing to know, and we're close to the end here, is if you do that audit and you find that there are things like we've been talking about that are going to cause a problem, you want to find that out as fast as possible. You want to make sure that there's a good power of attorney in place. And by good, I mean that it is current. It's got all of the powers you need to do what needs to be done to deal with this kind of a situation. Or you want to go ahead and get that guardianship conservatorship, encourage the family to do it, because you cannot get a guardianship conservatorship fast. Now, you can in some counties, but within the month. But if you're in a big county, you're not getting it for several months because there's a huge docket. It takes time, and no one cares that you're saying it's an emergency because you've got to have Medicaid to pay for the nursing home. No one cares until you go to court that day on the docket 4 months later. So, and by then you're already 4 months in arrears to be able to pay to qualify for Medicaid. So go ahead and start doing things. Encourage these families to go ahead and start doing things. I touched on this slide when I was talking with Sean. Can we prove that someone was the victim of a crime? Can we prove undue hardship? Now, those things, proving the victim of the crime, can be done outside before the appeal process. Undue hardship typically comes during an appeal. These are still more options. They still work, and it can be done. Now, sometimes the problem is who's going to pay for this, and you really have to have family members that are willing to do it, or we've realized that we've got this problem in advance early enough that we could do something with the claimant's own funds to be able to pay for challenging this. And that can be done as long as we do it early enough, using a special needs trust. So that's the takeaway for today, is be looking at your situations with the families and make sure if things are starting to spiral toward they need to go to a nursing home, then that means they need to start evaluating everything to see if they have problems, because that makes it easier for them to get things worked out, and it makes it easier for the nursing home to be able to get the person with Medicaid and know that they're going to be paid, so everyone is happy. And this, of course, is our preference. We like to get into things early, and we have our information on the screen if you need to call us. I think the presentation is provided to you, so you'll have the figures where you'll be able to go back and reference that.
I have a couple of questions. One of the things I've not seen the term, or I'm not familiar with it, of undue hardship. So how does one qualify? What does that entail?
It's difficult. It is difficult, because what you're saying is you're really saying that this person should not be denied Medicaid, even though maybe they did give money to the child, and it really was a gift. But we're saying they should not be penalized because they really will be put out on the street and there's no one to take care of them. And if they went back home, their house has no heat and there's truly no one to take care of them. It's hard to prove. It depends on the facts. That's one of the reasons I'll usually get DHR and anyone else involved that I can
Okay.
that will work on that kind of a topic, because the more we can show that it's a problem, the more likely it is that we can get it.
That makes great sense. And then the other thing I wondered as you were talking was, you said that about the spouse, to preserve the house, you could, put it, title it in one's name, etc. How long prior to the Medicaid app does that have to be done?
I do it even after we've sent in the app.
Oh, so
Before
it's something that
before
has to be within 5 years.
oh, you can do it. No. See, a transfer to a spouse is not a gift. And most
Okay.
people don't think about that. It's not a gift. And the house is exempt. All you're doing is preventing them from putting a lien on the house.
Oh my goodness, that's the best thing I've heard today. I had no idea. So we can do this the week we're going on Medicaid and we're good.
I do it at any point in time before they give us a Medicaid lien form. Now, once you've signed the Medicaid lien form, you're toast. But
All right. Okay. That was excellent. Thank you. I had not heard you speak, and I look forward to it. And I was not let down. You were great. Our evaluation link today, for those of y'all on phone, I know at least one of us are, is https:// www.surveymonkey.com/lowercase r/ all uppercase letters, S as in Sam, V as in Victory, F as in Francine, 39, T as in Tom, F as in Francine. Our password is Holliman, as in Holliman and Holliman Legal, as in Melanie Bradford Holliman, for whom we're so grateful for her education today. The password is Holliman, and that's capital HOLLIMAN. Password is Holliman. I've given the link, and we have another question from Ms. Fuqua for you, Ms. Holliman. When transferring to the spouse, do they have to be deemed competent? The receiving spouse, I mean.
not the receiving spouse, the one transferring. That's why you need those proper powers of attorney, or you've got to be in a position where you can go to probate court quickly. And if you have to wait 4 months, you're not going to make it if you're already in an application process. So you've got to have authority to transfer. But the person that's receiving it, they don't have to be competent. The person that's giving it must either be competent or someone has authority to do it on their behalf.
Got you. She said, great answer. Thanks.
Okay, great. Easy way to remember it. If I'm giving you a gift, you don't have to be competent or even participating in me giving you a gift. You don't have to know about it. I can just drop it off on your doorstep and say, here it is. Same thing with this. It's the person that's doing the giving that has to have the authority to do it.
Oh, so they have to be competent to give the house.
Well, not necessarily. You have to have a power of attorney. See, that's where I said before, you've got to have a good power of attorney. So if it's my mom and I have a good power of attorney that says that I can transfer, and my dad is at home, then I can transfer the house to my dad, sign my mom's name, because I had a good power of attorney. If I don't have a good power of attorney and mom's incompetent, then I have to go to probate court and convince the judge that we want to do this.
Got you. Well, it's layer upon layer, it seems, things that we need to do, which I guess is your point, is we need to start now, at least start when we begin to suspect something.
That, I mean, it truly is the way to come to the best end result for everyone. And when I keep saying, you know, the nursing home getting paid, well, if they're paid, they're happy. You know, clients are happy because Medicaid has been approved. Everyone's happy if you can get to it and address problems quickly.
Well, excellent. Thank you again so much. Thank you for those who attended. Join us on Monday of next week. We have Dr. Kay Nicole Brown discussing the ethics of mandatory reporting. And thank you again, Ms. Holliman, for being here today. You're excellent. And you have, if you'd like it, a standing offer to come back. Thanks to everyone. See y'all later. Have a great week.